of let's plant 1,000 churches and here's 3 different ways is just a concept. I mean, if we left right now, we'd all go, yes, how do we do that, right? And so what we are doing with Anglican 1000 is then trying to put some practical teeth behind more than just a challenge, but some practical equipping and relationships alongside of that. And so part of our methodology for pursuing this 1, 2, 3 challenge is our regional events. And so Jeff, if you could explain a little bit about what our regional events are going to be and how this ties in with the 1, 2, 3 challenge.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. Just a quick commentary. I've been having conversations with lots of you. Lots of you have been teaching here. What incredible encouragement to me. I'm knee-deep in a church plant right now, which is the pioneering model, if you will. We went out a few years ago and asked God to give us the lens that He has for our city. We ended up with an apartment that somebody gave us to use to start tutoring Muslim and Hindu kids. That grew, and from that, God gave birth to a congregation. I told our congregation last week, we cannot afford not to plant. The statistics are that churches that plant churches grow faster, and they grow faster in 2 ways, both spiritually and numerically. I'm heading up the regional strategy, and by heading it up, it's part of a team, and also helping coordinate and put together some of the assessment material for ACNA. Here's what I don't want to communicate as I talk to you about the regional strategy, that what we have is kind of a slick church planting roadshow training deal that we're going to just take on the road from Seattle to Boston and invite people to it. It is quite the opposite in the sense that we are trying to bring together resources. Our job is much more than development. It is to gather resources, and after we discover those resources, to integrate them into a whole and then make them accessible to people across the country, and not just in a national summit kind of context, but make it both geographically accessible and make it financially accessible. So as we've traveled throughout some of the regions and had lots of Skype calls and invited people to kind of feed into that, here's what we found in terms of resources within ACNA is that while we were thinking about doing assessments, there are assessments now going on. People are developing and have developed some wonderful assessment tools. So our role, rather than trying to start with from the very beginning and write a new assessment tool, is to collect from you what you have, what's working, and then try to develop a team around that in order to develop an assessment tool that will serve us together, and we can make it accessible both online and in the regional strategy. Another thing we're finding is that there are movements. There are movements, but when we talk to one person on one part of the country, are you aware that this movement's going on? Sometimes the answer is no, but I'd like to know a lot more about that. Some of you experienced that in the breakouts yesterday. Great conversation with Clancy Nixon. 50 people flowed into the Fresh Expressions breakout to learn what in the world's going on there and how can we piggyback on that and how can we learn from it and apply that. So what we're going to try to do on the regional strategy side is to make that accessible to everybody, not just a breakout, but it'll be a place during the week that we can drill down into those topics and offer some teaching and share common practices, what's working, what's not, for the sake of everybody in the spectrum from new church planter on to people that have been in the field for lots of years. Another area is training and development. I think of Tom Herrick's group. What an incredible resource. ACC, Phil Ashby down in Atlanta. I was just amazed that I was having these conversations as we were putting together the summit, that more than having to build new assessments or new boot camps, it's there. In many ways, our role, or my role, will be to coordinate that, and I will continue to extend invitations to you to feed back to our team and say, guess what's going on here in Plankington, South Dakota? You wouldn't believe it. And we'll in some way, and I have no idea what's going on in Plankington, South Dakota, by the way, but we'll try to make that resource, model, whatever it is, available. Rehabilitation work that's going on, a lot of cohort-based rehabilitation work with churches that are struggling in terms of how do we get healthy enough in order to plant. Planting networks, what Todd Hunter is doing, what I see John Briggs out there in the Cascadia Diocese. Phenomenal work that's going on, and we're headed out to Seattle in June. And we got on a Skype call with them. John brought all of the leaders out there in the Cascadia Diocese, and we had a couple-hour conversation about what the resources, what the developments were that were going on in Cascadia, and also the cross-pollination, what developments were going on in other parts of the country. So not only is the resource, but here's the other aspect of what we're doing in terms of the regional. It's identifying not only resources and movements and models that are going to be productive in the next couple of years and be very helpful to you, but it's also assessing the needs. So as we go from region to region, we just had a wonderful conversation with the folks up in Ottawa. Our question is, how can we serve you? How can we serve you? What is unique to that particular area that we might bring to you that may not be true of some of the other regions? So it's a lot of this is collecting information. Here's kind of three questions on our mind in terms of the regional strategies. What are the most helpful foundational tracks that need to be offered? If we're blocking out right now about 6 or 7 days, and it's not that everyone will need to be there or will be there for those 6 days, but some tracks will run 1 day, some 3 or 4. But as we look at the general scope of the region, what is it that we need to offer in those regions? And those will be questions that we'll be posing to you. Do we need to demonstrate and have people talking about the different models? Do we need to have an assessment? Do we need to have a boot camp for church planners? Do we need to have a track or a cohort that's dealing with church rehabilitation? All those will be questions in terms of how do we go about providing a regional event that ministers to and trains the full spectrum from somebody trying to discern for the very first time, am I wired to do this stuff, all the way to leaders who are trying to understand how to do multiplication. And again, it's not us doing the teaching, it's us gathering the resources in order for you to be able to communicate with each other. Second question, what resources and resource leaders might best serve those regions? So as we're talking with people like Tom Herrick and Todd Hunter out on the West Coast doing such great work, we want to kind of lean into the wisdom and have them available and traveling with us in the regions in order to make them accessible in a way that's helpful to you. And then the last question is, what resources might be helpful outside of ACNA? And some of you will have, and we found and discovered that some of you have resources outside of ACNA. For example, as we do the assessment, we're going to be looking at assessment tools, things like the DISC, GOLD, and the Strength Finders. You heard from Alan talking about the fivefold ministry. I had a wonderful conversation with Alan Hirsch last night, kind of debriefing what had occurred here with him. And he has, in a very humble and servant-like way, offered to help us in any way we can in terms of folding in the fivefold ministry as we do the assessment or creating training materials. He knows there are differences, but he just wants to serve. And I think we'll find with a humble spirit people outside of the ACNA that want to feed into that. Last thing I would mention is, and again, some of you have connections and have connected us with different individuals, but at the integration of college programs. Great discussion a couple weeks ago with Rick Richardson and Mike Breen and Alan Hirsch in terms of the master's program in Wheaton. Art Going, who is now serving as the Dean and President of the Anglican School of Ministry in Little Rock. Discussions about how will that play in these regions, being able to give church planters or budding church planters college credit, or actually taking the resources of a program like Wheaton's master program in missional church planting and plugging that right into our region and having a cohort that runs through those regions. So there's a lot of things we're exploring. I'm going to leave you with a kind of a next step and request that as we get started, and we'll be back to you having conversations, it's the request or the invitation to let us lean into the wisdom that you have and what you're doing and what you're developing. So you know the kind of the spectrum of what we're looking for. If there's a resource that you have, let us know. That may be a resource that will not only provide help and assistance with where you're at, but will provide help and assistance across the country and into Canada. We're going to be doing some survey work. You've already heard about survey. I can't afford to give away iPads like Dan, so mine is just a request to give us some feedback and help us understand what it is that is out there and what you need in terms of the regional development. So others of you may have some models that you could offer, and by models, just something that's working. Give us an opportunity to spend some time with you, understand that, learn that. We're going to be doing some video work and over the internet online learning, trying to produce what we're doing in the regions and providing that online so that we can do field studies. So William Beasley is an example. We could go to Chicago and do an interview with him or hear a little bit more about what's working and what's not working, and people can kind of tap into that live online. If you need to reach me for purposes of the regional strategy, you can reach me at jeff.weber, it's 1B, W-E-B-E-R, at AnglicanChurch.net. And I would be glad to have a conversation with anybody who would offer to help or provide resources or just passing along a need. As I close, let me just tell you an overview, and some of these dates are soft, some of them are a little bit firmer than others, of where we're headed over the course of the next year and a half. In June 24th through 29th, we'll be in Seattle, Washington. And Bill Briggs has been gracious enough to kind of head up a team there. So we'll be there in June. Then we will be in Ottawa, Canada, but we're kind of reworking that date. We thought it would be great to be up there in the summer, and we've now learned that summer's the worst time to do a conference in Canada because nobody wants to be inside when the 3 days that they have really nice weather up there. So. Then on to Boston, Massachusetts. We'll be there in September. And is that date pending, or are we? It's fixed. So, and when we say fixed, you could probably put fixed, not too pending kind of thing, because there's a little bit of fluidness to this. So that's the reason we haven't quite published these dates. But in the next couple of weeks, we're going to try to get those firmed up. Then on to Houston, Texas. Right now, that's targeted for October 7th through 12th. December 2 through 7, this is a pretty firm date in Atlanta, Georgia. Then in January 13 through 18, and that's 2014, we'll be in Phoenix, Arizona. And then back up to snowy Chicago, Illinois. Probably not in a summit format, we're not really sure at this point, but at least in addition to, we want to do a regional up here, March 3 through 8. So that gives you a little bit of a feel. The best place to continue to track with us as those dates get firmed up is the Anglican 1000 website. So thank you for letting us serve you, and let us know how we can do a better job of that. Thanks.
My role with Anglican 1000 is to help communicate and equip. That's my role. And I think back, the first church that I planted was in eastern North Carolina, in Fayetteville, North Carolina, a military town around Fort Bragg. And I was 22 years old. And I remember I got to the church because there was a group of about 8 folks who had gathered together, and the first thing they did was rent this little double-wide trailer. It had been converted into a chiropractor's office, and so there's a waiting room built on the end of it that sat around 22 people, and they got some curtains that had some nice grapes on them, and they put those around the glass door in the back, and we set up this little table, and I walked in, and they handed me a key, and they said, "Welcome," and I looked around and went, "Wow, I'm planting a church in a double-wide trailer that we used to be a chiropractor's office." And I remember looking around and going, I don't know what to do. I mean, I have no idea what to do. And at that time, that was 12 years ago, and the conversations about church planting in the Anglican world were really honestly anywhere. They were just not as hot and as heavy as they are right now. And so I was begging for resources for anything. And I remember all the things that we did so terribly. I remember when we thought that we were going to reach the neighborhood next to us because we outgrew our 22-seat sanctuary space. And after fighting the battle that we weren't going to go to 2 services in our 22-seat sanctuary, I'm telling you, somebody was like, "This is our home. We cannot leave it." I was going, anyway. So we moved into this 75-seat place, and so we were so excited about our new building, and we canvassed the neighborhood and hung out these little door hangers that said, "Come see our new building. Basically, we'll have cookies," right? And so we put out these door hangers, and we were there, and I put my collar on, and we had cookies out, and we said, "It's time for the open house." And the people were just going to flood in. And we waited there all night, and nobody came. I look back at it now and go, what in the world were we thinking? I mean, who puts out a door hanger that says, "Come see our new building. We've got a 27-member church, and this is what's going to reach our community"? I mean, it's wrong on so many different levels, but we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know what we were doing at all. And so these regional events, we want to help come alongside folks so they don't screw up like we have, right? I mean, they'll screw up in other ways, but we'll try to help them avoid some of the things that we have done. And one of my passions, because one of the things that the Lord has put in my heart because of that, is to not let anybody be in the same place where I was, which was to go and have this major burden and passion and hunger to plant this church so that people could hear about Jesus and then not know what to do. It's soul-wrenching. So I want to get resources into the hands of church planters. And one of the ways that we're going to do that is through these regional events and face-to-face training. One of the ways that we're going to do this is online. We really have a desire to develop a robust online resource center so that people, you go, "Hey, we have to name our church." How do you go through that process of naming your church? Well, maybe Anglican 1000 has some resources, and then somebody in the province has outlined how they went through the process of naming their new church plant. And we've got a 5-point thing. You can just read it and get some ideas from it. I mean, those little tiny things like that, just to give guidance in the integral time of planting, the early days of planting this church. We want to provide those things. And what we want to do is leverage the resources of the province to do that. I remember Alan and I having this conversation. He's like, "Dan, that's a fantastic idea. Let's do that. Run with that." And so it was a hunger for me. And not long ago, I had a conversation with Jonathan Smith down in Florida. And he said, "Dan," "I think we're missing a moment here because we have the opportunity through the internet to give people a robust resource library to be able to get tools in their hands." And I went, "I have a friend," and so we've had good conversations about how to get this up and going. And Winfield Bevins and I out in the Diocese of the Carolinas and the Cardi initiative that they're starting out there, we've had conversations about this as well. How can we start to leverage online resources to get them into the hands of the planter, no charge, easily accessible? And so we're going to need your help to do that, and you're going to be hearing from us soon about if you have ideas, if you have resources, we want to gather them and get them out to the people. And I'll be working with Jeff as well on the training structures for these regional events. How do we practically train our church planters? Because we want you to not just be inspired and supported. We want you to be equipped. We want you to have practical tools to do this work so that you know that you're not alone, and that you don't go out there unprepared. I spent 10 years planting that church in North Carolina before I moved down to Georgia to help plant outside of Atlanta a few months ago. And so I spent a decade of my life with the soldiers that were there. And our military wouldn't think about putting somebody on the front lines of battle without first training them. But we do it all the time in the church. Well, we want to be a part of helping make that not a reality anymore. And we want to leverage the resources of the province to be able to do it, so that we can send out people well supported and well equipped to do this work. That's our hope and our dream in this work. So to sum all of this up, Anglican 1000 is partnering with the diocese, the local churches, the local church planters to make 1,000 churches a reality, and to create a missional movement within our province that goes to 1,000 and then 2,000 and then 3,000. But we're not doing this work. We are doing this work. The province is doing this work. And so we want to know, how can we serve you? How can we love you? How can we help you? What things can we do to be able to help to make this a reality? So we want to open the floor. If you have any questions for us, for you to be able to come up to the mic to ask questions, or you can tweet as well at Anglican 1000, or you can use the hashtag A1KS13, Anglican 1000 Summit 13, A1KS13. You can tweet those in, and Matt Swab will get us those questions as you put them in as well. So if anybody has any questions for us, feel free to ask. Oh, sure.
When I was, Trevor, as a trial lawyer, after I'd finish a trial, I was always fascinated to kind of poll the jury and ask them what they've just heard in a closing argument or in an opening argument. You've heard, again, kind of an articulation, I hope an articulation of 1, 2, 3. So we just wanted to give a book away. We did this yesterday. And if somebody wants to come up to the mic and without reading anything, is just give us your version of 1, 2, 3 in 15, 20 seconds, and I'll hand you the book, The Shaping of Things to Come. So,
jurisdictional, plant through congregations, and pioneering. Is that enough? Do I need to talk more?
All right, that's the 3. That's the 3.
Okay.
What's the 1 and 2?
Oh, shoot. I don't know.
All right, no, you got it.
Maybe I'm confused.
Every church plants another church.
Oh, great.
One church,
Okay.
2 churches.
Every church plants another church. One church means 2 churches. That's actually my question. It's okay. Somebody else can have the book. My question is, if you're a brand new church plant, you've just started, are you also asking us to plant another church in the next 2 years? Or is this something you're asking for pre-existing churches? That's my question.
That's a great question. Let me try to reframe it. Brand new church plant, small group, whatever, are you asking us to do that? I think you have to ask the greater question, is the Lord asking you to do that? So that would be the place to start.
And I think perhaps another way to say it too is, we've got 30 people in my living room right now that have just started to gather together to plant a church. I mean, I'm not going to hive off 15 of those to plant another church. I mean, we've just got 15 in, and we're just trying to teach them Jesus right now, right? But we are starting right now to say we have a 5-year funding plan. In year 3, we're starting to put money towards the next church plant, and we have it in our DNA, in the stuff that we're writing, and putting the identity together, in the budget that we have. It's within the next 3 years. We are already putting money and effort towards our next plant. So we can't do it now, but we're setting the seeds right now that will grow into it and make it happen. Yeah.
All right, here, 1, 2, 3. One church planting another congregation in 2 years using one of 3 methods.
All right, and what are the 3 methods?
Jurisdictional, congregational, and then the greenhouse thing, which was
Pioneering.
Pioneering. Yeah, there you go.
Everybody okay with the greenhouse thing, right?
Well done.
There you go.
I'm David Kletzing, and I'm rector of Hope Anglican Church, about 25 miles west of here. And I'm not trying to lobby for that iPad, but I have a gift for Dan. And Dan and I had a conversation yesterday, and I have this axe that I grind, and I make people really bored quick in my deanery, and that's bivocational ministry, which was only mentioned once in this conference, and that's one of the speakers mentioned that there are some bivocational ministers here. Anyway, this is a book on bivocational ministry, and I'm just hoping that in the regionals and next time there is a summit, there will be some special emphasis on developing bivocational ministry.
Awesome, thanks. Wow, do I have to answer any questions to get the book or anything? I mean, this is so...
We get to win books. If you have an iPad you'd like us to win, just bring... That's actually a great point. We did a survey, as I mentioned, 230 churches. 56% of our planters are bivocational. 70% of our churches planted have only one either part-time or full-time staff in the province. I believe it's something like 70% of churches in New England are led by bivocational pastors. We're going to have to grapple with that. So.
Yeah, and the answer is yes. David and I had a conversation about this yesterday. Yes, we are having conversations with other folks as well, trying to figure out how do we equip our bivocational pastors, and how do we train, how do we make that a reality? So thank you very much.
You know, there are a lot of churches that there's this kind of mindset sometimes that bivocationalism is a stepping stone to a full-time position, where you see more and more in the church planting world that bivocationalism, so that pastor or the staff can be integrated with the community and culture, is becoming a way of life, not just a season of ministry. So.
Patrick.
Alan, did you say that, okay, then with the 950 churches, you guys are going to personally call all of them?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
Awesome. I want to suggest a couple of things.
Sure.
Number one, with the challenge out to all of us to pray the Lord of the harvest to send laborers into the harvest. I received this challenge not too long ago from a different source, and this guy plugged into his phone a daily reminder at 10:02, referring to Luke chapter 10 verse 2, pray the Lord of the harvest, a daily reminder to pray that. And so I plugged that into my phone, and every day I'm getting that message and asking the Lord to send laborers out into the harvest. We also are trying to plant a church, and we're putting that challenge out to our congregation, and we're calling our church planting effort unto the harvest, encouraging everyone to see themselves as potential laborers being sent out. So I just hold that out to you as a possibility.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Secondly, I think it's a huge task for you guys to call 950 churches. I don't know how many churches are here represented, but surely each one of you has relationships with other churches, and if you will call one or two of those that you have relationships with and just challenge them and say, hey, I'm signing up for this. I'm stepping up to this challenge of one church in the next 2 years and one of these three strategies. Let me tell you about it, and let me challenge you, and hold your brothers and sisters accountable in that way. I think it'd be great. Great way to help you guys.
Amen.
Thanks.
Amen. Well said. Gift.
Hi, Alan. I just wanted to come up because you were mentioning, we just talked about the bivocational stuff, and I'm a little hazy on how all this works, but I was wondering if maybe it would be good for you to share some of what we're doing in the Pair USA group as far as the insurance thing to support bivocation. It might be an interesting thing just
Excellent
to share
point.
with the rest of ACNA.
So Pair USA, as a sub-jurisdiction, almost like a super diocese in ACNA, has made a commitment to raise money so they can provide medical insurance to potential church planners, which actually helps them work in a bivocational job where they're not concerned so much about a dollar figure to meet their ends meet and have benefits, but that's taken care of by the jurisdiction. I think that's a very creative thing to do. There's no telling how many churches have been planted because of Starbucks, because people could work for Starbucks and have medical benefits, which becomes a big issue for us in this. So that's a great thing that they're doing. I just think that what Giffus reminded us of is when dioceses and churches begin to think innovatively. Necessity is the mother of invention. They begin to think innovatively. How can we get this done, and what do we need to do, and what has the Lord given us to be creative so we can assist and serve people, that the gospel goes forward. So thanks, Giff. Yes?
Maybe not a question for you guys, is maybe, if you have thoughts on it, that'd be great, but a request for church planners is my wife and I are kind of talking through, hey, we've got a group of people meeting at our house. There's 15 adults and there's 12 kids, and the oldest is 6.
Rock on.
So one of the things we start to think through is, can we do something more for them beyond hiring a babysitter and locking them in the basement? You know, well, the adults do church. And so our heart is really like, a lot of what we were hearing yesterday about catechizing and, you know, like the kids are part of our church too, but then thinking through the logistics of that, of being like, well, we don't have a ton of adults, and, you know, how do we do this? And so we're trying to be imaginative about what can a small community do to minister not only to our adults but the young in our midst. And if there's a way to share those stories or to hear more about that, we would really benefit from it.
Excellent. Thank you.
I will say one thing to that. You know, it's just a practical point. A lot of folks, when you begin to talk to them about being a part of your church plant, will oftentimes say, what are you going to do with my kids? I mean, I kind of want to be a part of things, but do you have Sunday school? I mean, what are my kids going to have? And I always tell them the story of, I have 2 sons. I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, and they've always been in the church plant. They've never really been in Sunday school and that kind of thing. And I always ask them, listen, if Sunday school is so important, has it really worked? I mean, are the past generations of who went through Sunday school now in church really involved? Or maybe there's another way to look at it, and to start to talk to them about the equipping nature of the community. And my sons, we went and visited another church plant recently, because I'm not meeting on Sunday mornings yet, and we went and visited another church plant recently that was meeting in a school. And at the end, the pastor said, before you guys go, before you leave, can you help us stack the chairs? My 4-year-old and 6-year-old went. And they started stacking, they were pushing them against the wall, because all they've ever known is church planting. And so they know that church is about serving, and it's not just about, I mean, my 4-year-old doesn't say, thank God I'm not just a consumer in church, but that's what he knows, that it's about the tangible work of God, and he sees it happen, and it's a reality, and he's a part of it, and he's a part of serving. And so when we can cast that vision for a little bit different way that the children are discipled, I mean, my experience has been that families dig that. I mean, they start to go, you know, that makes sense. That makes sense that we're going to make them an integral part of doing this work, and they're going to be better trained that way than if we put them in a classroom with fuzzy sheep on the wall. I mean, that this is a real experience of the gospel, and it's an amazing thing. So we have to do special ministry for our kids, but it's also another way to frame it for the folks who are coming into the plant. I'm sorry.
I want to second that.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
I think that we do the children a great disservice if we keep them out of the church and put them somewhere else. I don't think that's what the Lord wants. I don't think that's what he did. And there are many churches that don't do it. There are far more that do it, and they lose their children because the children are not integrated into the body of Christ.
Sure. Yeah.
Let me, Melvin, before you dive in,
I just want to share a point. I'm from Singapore. I came here with 3 years ago. I planted a church recently. My 2 girls go out with me to the street to invite people to the church. That was not what I'm here for. A moment ago, I was talking to Dr. John. He was telling me that yesterday the discussion mentioned 90% of the people are targeting 12% of the targets, which is the church, or those who have come into contact with our church, or those who have left church. But that should not be the case. Statistics have shown there are about 2.3 million of the new immigrants, as well as international students, coming to North America every year. Just imagine, for 2.5 years, you have more population of new immigrants and international students than my country, Singapore. I mean, isn't it great? If we were to target these people, they have never touched the gospel or the Bible. I share from my personal experience. 2 weeks back, there's a Japanese boy that came into our ministry, and we talked about the Bible, and I opened the Bible. They was asking me, what is the Bible, which is holding in the hand? Isn't it exciting? And he's been attending the church regularly for the last 3 weeks now, and we believe these people, they hunger for the gospel. Because in a foreign land like this, they are lonely, they lack of love, and they do not know what is the gospel. And this is a ready field for us. And if they don't stay with us in North America and go back, let me tell you, my brothers and sisters, they are a better missionary than you and I. They don't need to change a new culture. They don't need to learn a new language. They are a better missionary for Jesus Christ. And I'm excited about it. If you want to learn more, you can talk later on. I'm very excited about it.
We've got one more question from Twitter, one more from the mic, and then we're done. So
yeah, the Twitter question was this: any plans to include equipping for evangelism in the regionals, i.e., helping us plant evangelistic churches? The answer would be a clear yes, and hopefully not just at the programming level. In other words, not just a program, but in a way that's integrated into the plant so that it is part of the DNA. I mean, should there be any other kind of church except a church that's on mission and reaching out to its lost community? So both within rehabilitation spheres, that is helping churches reorient their culture and DNA, as well as helping new church plants begin with a missional DNA or a DNA that is outward oriented. So things like Alpha will be part of that, as well as the assessment and the boot camp in order how to develop a church with a certain kind of mindset.
Yes.
My name is Wes Hayes, and I would like to draw people's attention to a resource that's perhaps unknown to many of you. There's a conference we run alongside New Wineskins that's called Remix. We're going to be very intentional this time about trying to equip the young adults, college students, and seriously following Jesus high school kids who come to this conference to take an approach to sharing the gospel, which is a kind of life-on-life approach, talking about Jesus' story and your story and their story and trying to intersect those things in a life-on-life manner. The two particular things I want to say about that are we have somebody who I think is really sketchy who's going to be doing one of the workshops. We asked him anyway. Alan Hawkins is going to be doing a workshop for us on campus church planning. And so if you want to know more about that and you want to bring people from your church, especially college students and high school students who want to know more about how to plant a church where they are, this is going to be a good opportunity for that. There's also going to be a day-long seminar on how to get a youth ministry going, and that will include a very distinct emphasis on how you do that in a smaller church setting or a church plant setting. So just to draw your attention to Remix, April 5th to 7th, right alongside New Wineskins at Ridgecrest, North Carolina.
all right, we are. Yeah. Can you rephrase the question, please? We are constantly available to you for conversations and for ideas, and you can go on our website and find our email and contact information on there. We'd love to continue these conversations in the future. Again, we are here to serve you. And so let me transition us this way. We started this conference by saying this: the reason we plant churches is for Jesus. The reason we plant churches is for his gospel. The reason we plant churches is so that those who are lost may be found by Christ. And so what we're going to do for the last bit of time that we have together, we're about in just a minute here, we're going to have Bishop Bowers and his friends to come up and give us an offering of music that will lead us to the break. We're going to take a break for a few minutes, and then we're going to come back in here and we're going to have a commissioning service. And what the commissioning service will look like is a time of music and prayer and song where we can sit in the Spirit, when we can we can worship the God of the church, and also there will be folks that will be invited to come up to serve as prayer teams for you if you're discerning any part of church planting, or you're doing the work and you want prayer for the work that you're doing, or you're a rector that you want your church to be a part of. However it is that you're tied in with church planting, there are going to be folks here to minister to you and to pray for you, because all of the schemes and the plans and the regionals and the strategies and the methodology mean nothing without the power of the Spirit. It means nothing.